Welcome to this presentation on Flir's asset condition monitoring software called Assetlink. This is the first segment in a series of tutorials that covers the basics of operating the Assetlink cloud-based reporting and routing solution for thermographers. Assetlink provides a fast, convenient, and effective condition monitoring system for your assets, reducing reporting time and streamlining workflows. It operates on any device with a browser and is compatible with the Flir IXX series, the EXX series, the T500 series, and the T800 model thermal cameras. This first segment will focus on how to set up and structure the inspection program within your organization. This includes establishing an asset library that stores and manages your inspection data at a particular site. Part 2 will demonstrate how to take this information and use it to create inspection routes with the Assetlink service. Finally, additional tutorials are available that cover how to conduct inspections using these routes on your specific Flir thermal imager. In these presentations, thermographers will also learn how to use reference images that will enhance their data analysis and trending capabilities. The Assetlink program can be scaled for any size organization to monitor assets at a single location, or used at a multinational company that may have numerous inspection sites. First, we'll provide an overview of how data is organized and managed within Assetlink. It starts with the organization at the top, followed by workspaces, sites, and locations below. The heart of the system is the asset library, which is designated for a specific location. From this library, operators can then create and manage routes which thermographers will use to guide their inspections. Here's an example of the generic structure available in Assetlink. Within the organization, workspaces are established. Under the workspace, a specific site or multiple sites can then be added to the structure. Groups, buildings, floors, and rooms represent the remaining sections that are then used to further identify the precise location of your assets and ultimately their inspection points. For all of these presentations, we are going to use the following hypothetical organizational structure to demonstrate Assetlink's capability. We will define the organization as the Infrared Training Center and use the North America offices as the primary workspace. Within these workspaces, Canada and the US will be further identified as sites. Asset libraries will then designate the cities within each country using the group category for this purpose. Finally, we will define the building, and then the rooms within that building will target the asset along with the corresponding inspection points for each. To work with Assetlink, users need to first set up an online account. Go to assetlink.flir.com to sign up and register. An existing Flir support profile can also be used and is recommended if available. Next, let's get started by defining the workspace and the sites. Let's begin building our site structure for the organization called the Infrared Training Center. First, we will create a workspace and give it the title Teledyne Flir Offices, North America. An optional description can be added as well, but for now we will skip that entry. Select Create. Next, let's define our sites. These are the countries where we will further define the location and building information. Select the New Site tab and enter site name. For this first example, we will use Canada. Here, an optional description can be added as well, but we will leave it blank for the moment. Finally, let's add one more site for the United States. Now that we have defined both sites, let's move on and demonstrate how to create an asset library using manual entry. There are two ways to create an asset library. It can be done manually or generated from an Excel file using the comma-separated values format. First, we'll demonstrate how to do this manually. The asset library is built to identify the specific location of assets within the organization. There's no restriction on how far you can go in identifying the location information. The Infrared Training Center organization can be further defined by the sites in a particular country followed by cities. Let's start with the Canada site. To do that, we will use the New Location option and select Group since there is no City tab. Ancaster, Ontario will be our first city. Now, any one city in a country could potentially have multiple Flir organizations or addresses. As such, we will use the building designation to identify the individual location where the assets are located. In this example, we'll call one of these locations Flir Instruments Now that I have identified the building, the new location can be further refined by room. In this example, let's define the first room as the warehouse. And in this warehouse, let's say there is one electrical asset that happens to be a lighting panel. We'll call it lighting panel 42. Lighting panel 42 is going to have two inspection points. The first is circuit number 2. Let's add a description that identifies circuit 2 as controlling the main floor lighting system. Now, let's designate another asset and call this one circuit number 15. For the description, let's say circuit 15 controls the main floor heaters. We can continue to add rooms. Let's define the next one as the server room. Return to the Flir Instruments group and add a new room. This server room will have two assets. The first is a server rack. The inspection point on the server rack is going to be the main unit. Here we can add a description. In this example, let's make it a comment that reminds the technician that appropriate security is required to access the server room. Let's add a second asset and pretend it's a UPS. The UPS is going to have one inspection point, which we'll define as the outgoing power cable. Next, let's add another room. This is a calibration lab at the Flir Instruments location. In this lab, let's say we need to monitor 3 blackbody calibration devices. Let's say it's the 55 degree, the 80 degree, and 120 degrees Celsius blackbodies. Each one will be considered its own individual asset. The inspection point on each of the blackbodies will be the blackbody cavity. Let's add a note to the inspection point to ensure that the emissivity on the camera is set to 0.99 when inspecting this device. Let's add the remaining assets in this lab, including the 80 and 120 degree blackbody targets. Finally, we'll add one more room. This is for the infrared training center. Here we'll list 2 assets, including the dual connection lab and the spot size ratio lab with the appropriate inspection points. While the library is automatically sorted alphabetically to allow for easier updates and modifications, routing will establish the order of the inspections. In the meantime, let's add a second city called Waterloo, Ontario, and a building that we'll define as Flir OEM. In this building, we designated one room with one asset. For the United States sites, we can also add 2 cities: Hudson, New Hampshire, and Portland, Oregon. As with the previous locations, we defined buildings with rooms, assets, and inspection points for each of those sites. While manual entry works well, users may find it easier to either import an existing database or create a new one using a comma-separated value file from Excel. Let's demonstrate that next. An asset library can also be built by importing a comma-separated value file created in Excel. When doing this, it is important to remember that certain characters cannot be used with this method. These include the ampersand, the single quote, double quote, the less than symbol, and the greater than symbol. For this example, we'll use the same organization and location information from the previous section. The first row will contain the field names for city, office, room, asset, inspection points, and description notes. You might notice that the label names do not necessarily match the Assetlink library field names. This can occur when the file is created from an external database system in the field and can be rectified during the import and mapping portion of this process, which we'll get to in a moment. We have also added a field here that is not intended to be part of the actual library. It is included to show how external fields that may be imported from another database can also be potentially omitted when going through this process. For the purposes of this demonstration, we are using the same data from the previous section. This first entry will be for the Ancaster, Ontario site in Canada. The data is entered in the same order as before, with the first room representing the warehouse and its 2 inspection points. We will then move on to the 3 other rooms and include their asset labels and inspection points from the previous section. A major advantage to using the comma-separated values format in Excel is that entries can also be replicated easily by simply copying and pasting that data point into a cell. A single spreadsheet can also be used for multiple asset libraries, as is demonstrated here. The Waterloo Asset Library has been included in this spreadsheet, along with the locations, rooms, assets, inspection points, and notes. After all of the data has been entered, operators should save their work as a comma-separated value file. We recommend saving the current version first as a standard Excel workbook. This format will make it easier to edit the asset library in the future. Next, save the workbook again in a comma-separated value or CSV file format using the UTF-8 comma-delimited option. We also recommend using the same name as the Excel version to help keep your data and files better organized and managed. Repeat this process again for the US-based sites entering the data for both the Hudson, New Hampshire, and Portland, Oregon locations. For many maintenance programs, compared to the manual method, using this approach with the CSV file may be the preferred way to create an asset library, especially if you have multiple locations within your organization. To demonstrate how to import a CSV asset library file, we've deleted the libraries that were created manually in the previous section. To import an asset library from the CSV file, select the Import option and open the appropriate file. Let's select the Flir Canada Assets file and confirm. The following options will help define the hierarchy tree structure used during the mapping process. Since the selected CSV file already includes specific inspection points, the Create Inspection Points option should be disabled. The Map Columns option associates the columns from the file to field identifiers that Assetlink uses in building the library. The mapping process will follow the same path as the one we built manually. In other words, the location for city will be defined as a group. The rest of the mapping association is very intuitive and should be easy for operators to follow. The Asset Manager column from the selected file has no direct association within the asset library. As such, let's ignore this by selecting the Discard option. The Confirm step seen here displays a summary of the import that's about to be executed. If the information listed is not accurate, select the previous button to go back and adjust the data fields. The green checkboxes indicate that the import was successful and serve as confirmation that the process is complete. Click on the Asset Library tab to confirm that the libraries for the 2 locations have been created. A quick glance at the Ancaster, Ontario entry shows us that the library structure is intact, including a room, asset, and inspection point. Repeat this process for the USA site, creating the 2 libraries for the 2 different cities. Now that we've established our asset libraries, let's move on to creating routes in part 2 of this Assetlink tutorial. Visit the free learning resource page on the Infrared Training Center website, or check out our YouTube channel to watch these presentations and many more. And if you're ready to get certified, the Infrared Training Center offers a variety of courses at a number of convenient locations worldwide, including in the classroom, on-site, or online. To get started, give us a call or register today at infraredtraining.com. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation.